Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Emmy and I make videos about Paladin supports. Today's topic of conversation is going to be Lillith. I'm going to do a full breakdown on Lillith and everything about her, including all of the math breakdown of her and exactly how much she heals over time and all of those details. I'm also going to give my personal strategies and what I learned when I grinded her to 50, so I hope you stick around for the whole video. Something I always say at the beginning of my videos, this is my opinion. My builds are my builds and they're in the context of how I play, and it's okay if you don't agree with it. It's okay if you don't like my cards. These are all opinions, so tell me yours in the comments. I love opinions. I love to hear about what you guys do instead, and there might be a card that I hate that you really love or something vice versa. So I'm really excited to hear your guys' opinion. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. It does help my channel. And without further ado, let's get into it. So Lillith is quite a complex character, and there's quite a lot of things that we're going to need to break down about her, but different to a lot of other champions, especially healers, she has a passive. And that's kind of the first thing we need to talk about to completely understand her as a character. Lillith has blood health. She uses a modified blood pool that acts as both your champion health and a resource to cast your abilities. Both Swarm and Deathwings use her blood health to cast. I'll explain later how you regenerate your blood health. However, this cannot be healed by another healer. So say you have a Yang on your team and you're standing right next to her clone. It will only heal your base health. It will not heal your blood pool. So having a double healer with her isn't always as beneficial. So down here on your health bar, you'll see your blue health pool. This is going to be your base health. The red is your blood pool. It will take away from your health every time you cast one of your abilities. I will let you know how much they cost and exactly how much that affects you as we go on in the video, but it's important to understand that that is her main mode of casting. Cooldowns don't affect her as much. She has pretty low cooldowns on all of her abilities, so the blood pool is really where you're going to draw from with her. We're going to start with her primary fire, Heart of Crimson. Shoot a bolt of blood from your heart cube, dealing 625 damage per shot. Consume no ammo while Hex or Swarm affects a champion. You use your blood pool to keep yourself alive. So we already talked about the blood pool, but let's talk about her kind of base damage. This is pretty high for a healer. These are some damages of other healers at base for comparison. So this is a pretty high damage, although it does only have a max magazine of 4. It actually has a reload time of 1.4 seconds, but it can be canceled almost immediately after as low as 0.5 seconds. So reloading isn't really that big of an issue. Moving on, let's talk about her alt fire, Blood Hex. Lillith hexes an enemy or an ally, dealing current health damage to enemies or healing allies for an increasing value based on duration. You regenerate blood while this ability is active. So this is the ability I mentioned earlier that regenerates your blood pool. You're going to want to always have this active. The healing will ramp up, so it'll start at 100 on the person and it lasts for 10 seconds. So this is where we're going to get into a little bit of the math, and it took me a little while to do this. So it starts at 100 and it will be increased 25 every tick. After 26 or 10 seconds, which is the maximum, you're at 600 and it won't go above 600. The value resets if a new target is marked. This is why you always want to let your mark stay on a person without switching it from person to person before it's over. Because since it stacks so much, you're going to realize just how big of a difference that makes. So how much does this heal in all? How much can you expect to heal a person for? Well, I did the math and I double checked this against the game. If you are healing an ally and you leave it on them for the full 10 seconds, the full 20 ticks, you will heal 7,350 to that ally over the course of Hex. That is a huge number in 10 seconds. Mixed with your Swarm, she has enormous healing capabilities. I didn't really realize how high this was, and I had to double check my math at least 4 or 5 times because I thought there was no way it could be this high. But when checking it against the game, this is the reality of how much her Hex will heal. Even with the highest health champion, Yagurath, who sits at 5,750, you're still healing well over her max health. Now, this is not taking into consideration the anti-heal or any damage that champion is taking. So At 90% anti-heal, you're going to only be looking at 735 healing over the Hex. However, that's still not bad at all for such a late game ability. I really, really like this Hex ability, and I think it's really great, and I just really didn't know how much healing it gave somebody. So the thing about Hex is whenever you mark someone with it, you're also healing as they are. It also ramps up for you, so it'll start at 100 and go up to 600. So you are mirroring the amount of healing they're getting, and that is what is going to regenerate your blood pool. So that is what you're going to want to always keep someone marked with. Now, if you mark an enemy with it on the other side, enemies take 1.5% of their current health every 0.325 seconds. So what does that exactly mean? Let's say you mark a Maeve. She is going to take 28.5 damage if she is at full health, because that number is going to begin to go down because it is very, very specific in saying their current health. So it's not going to be based on their max health like other things would be. It's going to be based on what they actually have at that second. It also cannot kill the enemy. It can only bring them down to 1 health. So they can retreat and get away to their backline and narrowly escape you. There are a few downsides to marking an enemy, however. You are revealed to that enemy that you have marked. Now, I went in and tested this myself. You are not revealed to the whole team. You are just revealed to the person you have marked, so their whole team can't see you. Another common misconception I see is Hex cannot be cast through walls like Genos mark. This is something you have to be able to see them, and it does have a range, so it's not infinite. Whenever it's damaging somebody, it will deal damage 31 times. So it can bring someone pretty low, but like I said, that very specific wording of current health isn't going to bring them as low as you think. Even on Yagurath, the max damage you can do with Hex in 1 tick is 87, give or take. So it's just not always worth marking an enemy, but we'll get into that later. Ability 1, Swarm. Lillith summons a circular swarm of bats to heal her allies and damage her enemies. This ability can be channeled to increase its effectiveness after activation. It lasts 6.5 seconds and costs 825 blood to cast. The thing about Swarm is if you look down here at the bottom whenever you use it, there is a sound effect that goes, and there is a small bar here. You have to channel it in order to cast it. So there's 3 stages to this. So if you only channel to the first stage, you're going to be healing 75 every 0.25 seconds and damaging 55 every 0.25 seconds. So fairly low, but definitely not bad. If you channel up to the second stage, you're going to be healing 105 every 0.25 seconds and damaging 105 for every 0.25 seconds. However, if you pass that threshold and hit all the way to the top, you're going to be able to get into the third stage, which is 160 healing every 0.25 seconds and 125 every 0.25 seconds. So these numbers obviously are a drastic change. So the healing from stage 1 to stage 3 is obviously almost an 100 health difference. So it's also not even a second. It is every 0.25 seconds. So you are healing a lot in a second. Also, that damage is nothing to scoff at. You can actually kill a Victor with 1 swarm if they stay in it the entire time. This is a really fantastic ability that I really enjoy using, and sometimes it can feel like you're spamming it a little too much, but really there's no harm in having it down. It's also a really great offensive ability. I feel that it's really nice to use on point because it helps deter people from point. They may need to back up. Obviously, it's not going to apply anti-heal because it's not a weapon shot, but it's still damage that's going against that person. I will let you guys know there is a bug with this. If you hex somebody, it's going to lock you out of your abilities. However, you can still hold down your ability. If you do that, it will make it look like you're channeling it. However, you never get the channel bar. So once you let it go and you place it, it's going to give you level 1, and there's nothing you can really do about that. I recommend waiting until you see those X's come off of your abilities at the bottom. That way you know you can actually channel it correctly. It's just a bug that you can channel it at all whenever you're locked out of it. Deathwings. Lillith leaps into the air and gains air control. Reacting this ability slams directly down, dealing damage in a small area. It costs 350 blood to cast. So this quickly costs much less than Swarm, and this is her movement ability. It only has a 2-second cooldown, and it really is a fantastic movement ability. There are cards that can make you go higher or farther. However, I think just at base, it's also very, very good. Whenever you slam down, it will give 225 damage in a 15 unit radius, so not too far. But whenever you go up, you have a range of 75 units to go. So you can go vertically and horizontally 75 units. That's really far. They recently added that you can channel Swarm and use your movement at the same time. So while you're channeling, you can move. Courtesy of one of my commenters, they let me know that you can jump mid-air to get extra height. I actually think this is a really good tip that I didn't know about, and honestly, I've started using it. It's fantastic. We should all start doing this. So if you just jump mid-air, it'll give you that extra boost into the sky when you use your ability, because you don't have to be on the ground to use it. You can use it mid-air. Her ultimate is Blood Moon. Lillith grants her team pure lifesteal, unaffected by anti-heal for 8 seconds while gaining increased movement speed, jump height, and blood regeneration. So, whenever she first ults, she takes 50% less damage and moves 50% slower. That is not for the whole duration. That is at this little window right here that you can see where she's really slow and crosses her arms. She's going to have that damage and slow right then. So when she uses this, as in the description, it's going to give faster movement speed, you can jump higher, and the blood it regenerates is 525 blood every 1 second, and this ultimate lasts for 8 seconds. It's actually quite long, and it does change the sky depending on the skin, but in her main skin, it changes the sky to a blood sky. I think that's very cool. This is a fantastic ultimate in my opinion. Not only is it a self-preservation ult for yourself, just with how much blood health it regenerates over time, it also is really devastating to the other team. It makes their screen kind of red and hazy and not hard to see, but it would be nicer if it wasn't that way. I also think the pure lifesteal is nothing to scoff at. Let's get into her talents and her cards a little bit. Her level 0 talent is Cursed Accord. Decrease the blood cost of your abilities by 35% and increase your healing done by 15%, but reduce the damage you do by 25%. So that's a lot of numbers. So I broke down all the math for you and gave you numbers that will kind of help you out. So the costs will go down by 35%, meaning your Swarm is going to cost 537 blood, while your Deathwings is only going to cost 228. So that's a pretty significant decrease for both of those. The healing increase for your Hex is going to be 8,452 healing over the course of Hex. Swarm is going to go up in the intervals of 86, 120, and 184 relative to the channeling you do. However, the 25% damage reduction is going to nerf your main weapon to 469 damage, and your Swarm is going to go down to 42, 79, and 94 damage. I'm going to put on screen what the originals were just in case you've forgotten, and you can see the relative changes in each of them. So this is where you're going to get the most healing output with her. Obviously, that 15% increase and that decrease in blood cost is really great. I don't mind the decrease in damage very much, but I can understand how other people would, but I would highly recommend using this talent. Maelstrom of Carnage. Swarm now casts on yourself and follows you around instead of being placed on the ground. Its ability cost is decreased by 25% and its radius is increased by 30. So this again decreases the Swarm cost, and it is going to be 619 when you decrease this, and the radius is going to go from the default 25 to 32. I actually think this is a great hybrid card. I've seen a lot of Lilith succeed with it as a damage card and as a healing card. If I run a damage Lilith, this is the card I tend to use because damage Lilith can be really, really fun. So this isn't a terrible card to pick for healing, but I wouldn't consider it her best next to her level 0 one. Her level 8 talent is going to be Murderous Intent. Your projectiles from the Crimson Heart now pierce and deal 90 more damage to subsequent enemies hit after piercing, but their size is reduced by 20%. So it doesn't name it in the card. However, she has a range of 200 normally. That's her viable range before you start hitting damage fall off. But with this card, it removes a range limit altogether, so you can hit however far away you want. However, I will say, I do not like this card very much. It's highly situational, and I've seen very few Lilliths do well with it because you really need people to be lined up. Leon has piercing ability, so does Tiberius, but it's not very often that they're being used as piercing abilities. They're more being used for their damage capabilities. So I just feel like this isn't necessarily helpful, and if you're going to run a damage build, Maelstrom of Carnage might be more helpful in that regard because of the damage you're going to be getting from your swarm at that point. So onto her cards and what my loadouts are. So I'm going to show you my original loadout for Lillith that I still did well with just fine, and then I'm going to show you the loadout that I currently use because I really like how I play with it. I think either of these are good. One of them is going to be built completely around healing and swarm. So if you look at my original loadout, you can see that I have one specific card at level 5, and I think this might be the most important card that she has in her entire collection. Blood Cannon. Increase extra blood health by blank while decreasing base health by blank. At level 5, this increases your blood health by 1,250 while decreasing the base by 625. Here's the thing. This card intimidates a lot of people because it makes them feel like, oh my god, I'm going to like reduce so much of my health and I won't have any health left. You don't need your health. Forget your health. You need your blood pool. That's what's going to regenerate at an insane rate. So having your blood pool is going to be more important every single time. There is not a reason to not have this card at 5. I know it seems nerve-wracking, however, it will change the way you play and your capabilities as a healer with her, since you now have 1,250 extra blood pool to work with. That's a whole swarm and several of her wings. The other cards that I ran are either buffing cards or just cards that I found good. Symbiotic Relationship is a great one. I really like this card. I'm going to get to the math in a second, but that's actually, it really doesn't cause as much of an issue as you would think, especially if you're using her level 0 card Blood Sense. Waning Moon is another really fantastic one because it's going to reduce the cost of your swarm just by having an ally marked by Hex, which you should have anyway. There's not a time you shouldn't have someone marked, so it's great regardless. The card Blood Sense is good, and honestly I think it's pretty good. I just find that my teams, especially in casual, don't capitalize on it as much as they could, so this can be a really good card. Even at level 1 it's pretty broken. I would use it if you are interested in that, but unless you have a team that you feel can pick up on that reveal, it's not going to be as helpful. I actually got a comment asking me about Convenient Leech. So base resilience is going to be 25%. So you'd have to get this pretty much all the way to level 5 to even equal level 1 of resilience. I did used to use this card. I don't use it as much anymore just because there's other cards that are better than it, and it's not that it's bad, but there's better ones, and so I personally would not use it. But if you feel that you're getting a lot of use out of it, or you're against a team with a lot of CC, it could be helpful to stack more resilience into your deck. But personally, I did take it out of my new deck, which looks like this. It is definitely built completely around Swarm. Obviously, Blood Cannon is still at 5, but I put Symbiotic Relationship and Enriched Blood at 4. And let me show you why. Enriched Blood takes off 1.7 seconds max and heals for 220 with the healing talent. Symbiotic Relationship costs 644, so not even what it is at max, and deals 220 when you're running that level 0 talent. So these are separately. So you are healing for hundreds more if you're running both of these cards. There are not many healers that can say that they have cards that just base increase their healing with this little of a pull. So I honestly think these two cards are great. I used to not like Enriched Blood, but I actually really enjoy it now. It's just a pull and push, and honestly there's not much that is pulling. I did keep Waning Moon because I think it is a really good card, and I added Charms because I said this in my Dumbo video, I love buffing people. I love being a support that can heal and buff people, so anything that does that, I'll take it. but those 2 cards can be switched out for any others that you like. Cards in her deck that aren't great are honestly kind of hard to find. She has pretty good cards overall. If you're really looking for a card that's not good, you may say Gloomy Nook. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of cards that give you a shield as a healer, like 120 health shield if you like use your movement ability. There's very few exceptions where I like shielding cards for healers. Furia is one of them, but Lillith just isn't. I feel like they're so easily broken. Most champions do way more than 150 damage, so if you're really trying to get out of jail free card, it's not going to be it. Let's talk about how to defend yourself with Lillith, because there's a lot of ways to do that. I mentioned this several times throughout the video, but it's the most important detail about her. You should always have someone marked. If you don't, you are making yourself vulnerable. A lot of the times what makes Lillith vulnerable is their own mistakes. So if a Lillith is really on point, they can dominate a game. But if they are lacking on marking a hex or they're not paying attention around them, they're going to have a lot of problems. And when I say pay attention around them, that is because when you're fighting a flank 1v1, Lillith has distinct advantages. First of all, her movement has a very low cooldown. It's 2 seconds. It's not very expensive, especially when you're using the Blood Sense talent. And it makes her very, very mobile. You can move a lot in just a few seconds. If you are trying to get from one place to another, you can move from this platform to that platform and to another one. And now you're across the map from that flank. Sure, they can try to chase you, but not many flanks are going to be able to movement that fast towards you. Yes, there's Maves, Eevees, Sevens, Androxuses, but you also have Lex or Buck that have higher cooldowns on their movement abilities, and they're not going to be able to vertically follow you. So not every flank is going to keep up with you in that way, and damages aren't going to be able to keep up with you, especially ones like Vivian or Victor. They're just not going to be able to keep up with that dynamic that you have with that movement ability. Let's talk about marking an enemy. I do not find it super beneficial. As we saw earlier, it does significantly less damage, meaning that you're healing for significantly less. If it's dealing 28 damage to that person, so a Mave, you're only going to be healing for 28, and that's only going down. So I highly recommend marking an ally, even if you're in a 1v1 fight. You really need to play it by ear, but marking a flank isn't always the right way to go. Marking an ally while you're fighting can be so helpful because that means you are constantly regenerating that health. Sure, it has anti-heal, but you're healing for much more than you would before. You also should use your swarm in order to fight off flanks. Your swarm doesn't always have to go on point. Like I said, it has another very low cooldown, and it's just so much damage. Like I said, it can take down a Victor if they're in it the whole time. So when you get flanks like a Skye, who needs to be right up and close to you, you can put down your swarm and it makes them back up. They have to get out of your space. So it can be really good for pushing people out of your space and keeping them out of your space while you fight. So it gives you maybe a little bit of advantage. Let's talk about maps and skins. Starting with skins, the default is kind of hard to see with her swarm in game. She only has one other skin that has different textures, and that is the Star Sister skin. This is what the swarm looks like, and I find it much easier to see in game. However, that being said, you can see the Star Sisters easier if you are an ally, but also if you're an enemy. So if you're a default Lillith, it's going to be a little harder for your allies to track just because that red is in the game a lot and can be mistaken for things like Skye Smoke Bomb or other AoE effects like that. A lot of things have a field similar. So using Star Sisters is going to make it a little bit more noticeable to your allies. However, a lot of people find the voice annoying, it costs money, and the enemies are going to be able to see it easier. So you just have to weigh what's better for you. For maps that she's good on, I find that Lillith excels on a lot of maps. There's not really any maps in particular that she's horrendous on. She can get by on most maps, but I do have to put the top ones as Bright Marsh, Stone Keep, Warder's Gate, Jaguar Falls, and Splitstone Quarry. The reason that I have to put these down is because Things like Bright Marsh and Warder's Gate are very compact on point. It's very easy to see everybody who's in that point area, and you can access flank routes a little bit easier. For Stone Keep, if you go up top or you need to retreat, you can go up top. You can heal from a lot of different places. Her swarm places really well when you're up high, and she is able to use her wings to get up there when you use certain cards. There's a lot of things that are very, very helpful for her in that map. Jaguar Falls is just a really good map for most healers in general. I don't think I've made a video on one yet that's not good on this map, just because overall the lanes are really close, they're well laid out. I just really enjoy most supports on this map. Splitstone Quarry is another one, and this is for the big reason, and honestly I would say this is her best map in the game. There are so many ledges and places that she can escape to that flanks cannot chase her. So Lex or Sky cannot chase you up onto this area of that map. Or if you're up top on these platforms and you're trying to escape, you can go to here or here, and it's going to be much harder for that flank to follow you. The point is also easily accessible from these high spots. It just gives her a lot of vantage points, and it's really, really nice. For her mid-tier, I put Serpent Beach, Dawnforge, Frog Isle, Frozen Beach, Ice Mines, Shattered Desert, and Timber Mill. Serpent Beach does have a lot of high up areas that she can thrive in, but I just don't feel like she's as great since there's so many small corridors where her swarm isn't going to be able to do the max area it could be. It's also kind of hard to keep track of everybody on that left side, and you can access the right side pretty easily and from up high, so that's why it's going to go in mid tier and not low tier or high tier. Dawnforge is a similar reason. I feel like it is very separated and it's very easy to lose your teammates on it if you're not careful, and I just don't feel like she can be used to the best of her ability, but those high spots are still really good for her, so she's still fine on this map. For Frog Isle, I just feel like it's got a nice point area, but it's a little too open for her playstyle, especially with the fact that her swarm is so stationary. But it can also be really nice for hex, so by no means is it bad. It's really great for hex marks and then being able to put swarm on point if you are trying to balance on this map. Frozen Guard is really far. First of all, it doesn't have any high advantage points, so it's a little bit hard to get away as her in this map. And it also has a lot of small corridors that separate out the lanes really specifically, so it can be kind of hard to keep track of everybody and heal all of them and mark with hex when you need to, since everybody is usually behind walls. Ice Mines is a similar issue. The point is quite open to the right lane and the left lane, but unless you're on point, it's not very open. You do have those vantage points, but they can be a little bit hard to maneuver into the cubbies with her because her movement ability is quite directed to me. So I don't think this is a bad map, but it's not her best. Timbermill has finally crawled out from the worst category for all the other healers I've done so far. Simply because the high up vantage points and all of the places she can retreat to are actually really great for her. Her range is so far, like I said, it's 200 even without her offensive card. So I actually think this map is pretty good for her. The only downfall is since it has so many buildings, it's kind of hard to mark people with hex who need to be. And the range is so far, and people can go so far away without a super long range on her hexing mark. Shattered Desert is fine. It's pretty open, but it does have those big walls that can be kind of hard to mark your team in. And like Timber Mill, it is quite spread out, so it is kind of hard to be able to get those hexes on people you need them on. Her worst maps to me are Ascension Peak, Bazaar, and Fish Market. Fish Market just has too many walls. It's too spread out. It's really hard to mark people on it. Bazaar is a similar issue. It's not that it's spread out, but rather that there are so many walls. Even the whole point is like encapsulated in walls. So being able to mark hexes and get your swarm down exactly where you want it can be really tricky on that map. Ascension's Peak capture point is just too big. It's a big square or a rectangle instead of being a circle, so her swarm can't cover the whole thing, and tanks tend to move a lot on that point. So where you might have just placed your swarm is where they might be moving out of to the other side. So I don't really recommend her on that map just because of how big that point is. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and taking the time to get all the way through it. I know it was a little long, but I had so much information to fit into it. Please let me know your opinions in the comments. Let me know if there was something that surprised you or something that confused you. I'd love to answer questions. If you want to leave a like on this video and subscribe, I would love to have you. I am making more Paladins Back in Time videos coming soon because you guys really seem to enjoy it. I uploaded an old talents video recently. If you'd like to go watch that, it will be in the end card. I'm going to post a poll at the end of this. You can go to my community tab on my channel and vote for what champion you want to see next for the breakdowns. And we are going into season 6, so it's going to be quite different looking at support so far. So I am going to try to leave champions who are getting big changes in the upcoming patch out of the poll so that all the information I'm giving is accurate. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.